Everyone, welcome back to my channel. This week I've been in a very Sherlock-y kind of mood, especially thinking about The Hound of the Baskervilles. And while I am currently reading that, and it might take me a little bit longer, I thought I'd go to the Toronto Reference Library to take a look at the very special collection that's only about Sherlock Holmes. Now, I've probably titled this video like Sherlock Holmes Special Collections, but the library itself, so it's the reference library, but then within it, it's the Arthur Conan Doyle collection. And it has many Sherlock things. So it's got kind of like three sections where at the front you have a chessboard with many Sherlock Holmes characters. It's a whole vibe. It's got many books lining the walls that are retelling, pastiche writings, all kinds of bindings, like if you have extra copies of The Strand. There's also this entire room that's much more decorated, and in there we have editions of Sherlock Holmes, multiple retellings from across the ages, from all over the world, but also things that are connected to Sherlock Holmes or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So if he was really into the occult, if he was friends with Harry Houdini, anything to do with him, with his life, with his family, with Sherlock Holmes, and any kind of Sherlock retelling. And then we have items, things that Doyle gave to the library or to Toronto. He was in Canada for a while and traveled. I know he went to the Jasper National Park and he was meant to write an article about Canada. He has a lot of notebooks and just many things that are stored now in Toronto. So then over time, they've collected even more things. And then this is where the third section of this special collection library comes in, where it's at the back. It's the archives or the rare books, and these are kept behind lock and key. And this is where you need to ask the librarian for help to retrieve those items. Now, I used this once back in 2015 for an actual paper where I requested to see Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's letters to the Strand and some writings that he's done that were about Sherlock Holmes. So they're called author's papers. They have those, and I was doing research, but I've never taken a look closer at some really cool rare items to do with Sherlock Holmes. And I thought, why don't I just go now and see some Hound of the Baskerville or just kind of cool little Sherlock things that I could see, and I thought I'd share that with you. So the first thing that I requested was the first Beaton's Magazine Christmas Annual, where the first Sherlock Holmes story was published. So this is A Study in Scarlet. And I have a few Beatons in my own library, but they're very thin compared to this one. And I think it's because it encompasses a few other things and ads, but also it has the entirety of A Study in Scarlet. It wasn't serialized like a Dickens novel would have been. So the entirety of A Study in Scarlet is in this issue, and it's very thick. So that surprised me. And I know it's been rebound and fixed a little bit by a conservator. The librarian mentioned that to me, but it was just so cool to hold in my hands this original historical artifact that I've seen only facsimiles of. And I know that they have online a digitized version of this, so you can print out your own if you really want to have your own facsimile. I thought that was really cool. Now, the second thing that I asked for was the very first edition of The Hound of the Baskervilles. So here we have this kind of red hardcover book, and it's got the original illustrations in it, and these original illustrations would have been made and published in the Strand when it was serialized. So it was serialized because this is a bit longer than A Study in Scarlet. I really enjoyed seeing how the writing was actually very legible. It wasn't very teeny tiny and you had to squint your eyes. The book feels very light in my hands, like it's really easy to read through. It's a decent size, and it's beautifully made. It's beautifully constructed. Obviously, I don't know if they knew what a big deal this book would end up being in the future. This was published in 1902 as one volume, and it had been serialized for 6 months in 1901. I then asked if I could see the original Strand books. Now, these would be contemporary to the publications. It's just they were bound together after 6 months of publications. So I didn't get the original like when it was serialized as an individual strand issue. You can see the same illustrations as you saw in the first edition, which is really cool. I don't know, it's just there's something so special about Sherlock Holmes and its lore and how beloved this character is. That kind of brings me to the next things that I asked to see, because a lot of people tend to make artistic representations of novels that they love, especially if they're big in the book arts. A couple from the Czech Republic, who are both artists, decided to make a copy of the end portion of The Hound of the Baskervilles, shaped as the Hound himself. And here we have this beautiful, gorgeous book. I'm gonna just take a moment here to observe it closely. I tried to take a really good look at the whole thing, and it opens. And when it comes to things like this, it's really fascinating to think about the preservation and the longevity of something like this, like what it entails. You know, you have a lot of leather involved, you have a lot of materials that are not like a usual book. So it's really fascinating to see this. It came in a very unusually shaped box as well, so that was kind of interesting to see side by side. I loved this so much, and it was a lot smaller than I thought it would be, because online when I saw a picture of it, it looked a lot bigger. I expected it to be kind of the size of a purse maybe, or a helmet or something like that, but instead it was just very tiny. It was the size of my hand. And I think when you work with something so delicate and small, it's even more fascinating. Which brings me to the next item that I saw, which were a bunch of miniature books. So somebody, an artist who I will list here, decided to make an entire case of Sherlock Holmes books. Now, all of them are in here, and each one of these miniatures includes the entire text of that story, which is fascinating. Like, you can actually flip through it and see the entire text. And because of that, The Hound of the Baskervilles is 4 volumes of this little miniature set. The amount of love and care and patience that went into this little shelf is beyond me. Like, it's so beautiful. I've never seen an entire set like this, and usually when I see miniatures, it does not include the entire text. It's kind of hard to fit it all in there. But I did kind of try to see if there are illustrations, and that is the one thing that they do not have, which makes sense because they're trying to fit in the entire text. I don't know if they're meant to be read. I don't know what the purpose of this is other than an artistic endeavor, but it's just so much fun to see and to explore and to know that they exist in the first place. Another artistic thing that I saw, and this is again by that same couple who made the Hound head. Names will go on the screen as I'm talking about this. They made another copy of the Hound, and this time it included the entire text. So we have the whole book with the illustrations. It's a 4th or 5th reprinting. It's not a first edition, but it looks almost like a facsimile inside. But what they decided to do this time is to bind it in this very special leather, and it includes a lot of calf skin and snake skin and frog skin. It's attached to this chain, kind of like the Hound, and I thought initially that the chain was tied to the box that it came in, the archival box, the clamshell, but it wasn't. So you can actually take this out all together and look at it closer and examine all of its artistic glory. Once more, I always think about, the long-term preservation of something like this, because now you're not dealing with a book only and the paper and that kind of thing. You're also dealing with materials like skin, right? So now you're entering this very strange realm of rare book conservation or preservation, and the more people you have handling these books over time, the more you're going to have to think about things like this. And it is open to the general public, so anyone could go in there and ask to see these items on the spot. They'll retrieve them for you right away, which was a very nice surprise, because a lot of rare book libraries kind of request that you tell them in advance, at least 24 hours, or that you give them specific times where they retrieve it. So it was really cool to have all of these things brought to me as I was requesting them. So as I'm doing all of this exploration and in-depth look at these beautiful artistic books, one of the librarians there mentioned that there are 2 books published by the Folio Society. So the books are just, you know, Sherlock Holmes stories. It looks kind of like a general, normal Folio Society book. However, there is an artist who made 4-edge paintings on these 2 books. So they are both really cool to look at, but you need somebody to hold them in the way that you hold the 4-edge painting, so you could see the entire detail. So I couldn't do it myself, so I had someone else hold them for me. And you can see them here. It's just so cool. That is kind of all I had time to do, other than another minor exploration of the room at the front. And I wish more people knew about it, especially if you visit Toronto for like one time and it's this free place you can go to and see all of these items. They're for everyone, and they have so many more things at the back. I mean, I was just really in a Hound kind of mood, but you know, maybe in the future I'll take a look closer at some of their other books related to other Sherlock Holmes stories. And the grand finale of all this was that the librarian told me about this alleyway behind the library that has this very special mural made. And the mural is the combination of a lot of artists working on these things and them creating this huge sort of printed banner or depiction of the art on this kind of, I don't know, I want to call it like a board, but it felt different. Like it wasn't a spray painted situation, but it had all of these depictions of Sherlock Holmes stories. And I did take a closer look when we went outside. It was such a fun Sherlock Holmes kind of day. Let me know if your town or place has something cool to do with Sherlock Holmes, or if you've seen some really cool depictions of Sherlock Holmes stories. I'd love to hear from other people. I think with Sherlock, there's just so much that can be done. I know that Sherlock Holmes and Dracula are the 2 most retold characters. Like there's so many fan fictions and retellings and adaptations of these 2 characters. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in a future video. Bye! Yes, very nice people.